Judd, talk to me about this always be an athlete mindset. Where'd it come from? What's the meaning behind it? And let's start there.
Yeah, I kind of developed that name, the term. It used to be actually the title of my Instagram page was always be an athlete. A long time ago. It's just a mindset that I decided to embody about a decade ago. I was entering my 30s, and I just noticed the men, especially that I was training, especially or women too, they stopped viewing themselves as an athlete. They would talk about how they used to be an athlete or were an athlete. And I just believe that, and people have an idea that being an athlete is encompassed in a competitive event. But I believe that daily living is an athletic endeavor, and we can do small things better and more efficiently, smoother, that will help our lives be better and also help protect us. And when I would see these injuries, both acute and chronic, crop up, I started thinking, well, it's because you're not moving like an athlete. And, you can be big and strong. And if you don't plant your foot right, or if you don't have basic coordination skills and reaction skills, bad things can still happen. And I just embody like daily living like an athlete in small ways. And, I just watch people move. It's kind of one of my things that I'm into. And I would just see certain people just move with a certain smoothness throughout life. And I would see as people age, they kind of start to lose that smoothness. You can tell when you see an older, like, have you ever seen somebody in their 60s and they're like jacked and shredded, but they still move like an old man, kind of herky jerky movements, like they lose motor units. And it's like he looks good when he's standing still, but you can just tell his age when he starts to move. And some of these dudes, they might have a little belly or something, and they just are smooth in their movements and they move through life like an athlete. And that's kind of thing. You don't need to be competing, even though I think that's great. You should compete in something if you can, to just be an athlete every day.
Yeah, I see a lot of that, what you described there with those older guys that are fit and jacked, but struggle to move athletically. I see a lot of that. I came up in the bodybuilding world, 25, my first show. I kind of put my trunks up back in 2017. I haven't competed, but it was where I spent my 20s and 30s, was in that environment, in that culture. You see incredible physiques there, but they struggle to move because they haven't embraced that
So I think there's like a battle between the functional fitness guys and bodybuilders, and there doesn't need to be. Like, I love bodybuilding. I love the aesthetics of it. I used to be a competitive one when I was younger, and you don't need to be one or the other. You can be a bodybuilder that also works on their athleticism.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was something I always prided. And I think that's why your content drew me in, because I'm like, here's a dude that looks like me. Reality, you look a little bit better than I do right now. I mean, you're jacked, and, but I'm like, here's a dude that looks like me. Like, he's jacked, right? What are you, 250, 260?
Yeah, I try not to weigh myself.
Yeah. But here's this incredible physique that, like, if you dieted down, like, you could walk on stage probably later this year. But then you see you move, and it's like, okay, how do you get this balance and grace? And I love that you said it starts with the mindset, right? We have to stop saying, I used to be an athlete. Our entire organization is built on identity, right? So it's the minute you say, I used to be, now you've removed yourself from holding that identity. And just subconsciously, you're going to avoid doing certain things. And subconsciously, you're going to put yourself in positions where you may get hurt because you're not a quote unquote athlete. So you talk about these daily livings. What are 3 things daily that somebody that lives and always is an athlete does that somebody that isn't doesn't?
3 things. So I don't know if I can come up with 3, but I think the number one thing is, to live by the mantra, like, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And I think we look at exercise as a prescription of time, intensity, heart rate, reps, weight, and we check those boxes, and we don't focus on movement quality. And honestly, in my own training, like, when I prescribe workouts, I have to give sets and reps because people would be lost without it. Very rarely do I go by a set number of sets or reps. It's the movement quality that I focus on. And, at the end of the workout, it ends up being around the same 4 sets or 6 reps or whatever it is. But if I do 8 reps or 5 reps, that's not really my main concern. It's the movement quality. And I think the number one thing is to focus on the small details of your movement and work and making small, simple things perfect that everybody can do, and then stack those things together and then add speed. So I think people see complicated movements. So I'm a trainer, but I was a trainer for 15 years for young kids, and teaching them the fundamentals of athleticism. You cannot you can't just give them a drill. You have to break it down into very small pieces. And then they have to break, and then you have to practice those small pieces consistently until they come naturally. And then you just stack those together. And then I always say, never force speed. Speed will flow. When you get so good at something, it's just like clearing houses back in the Army. You never go in rushed. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Once you get so good at it, the speed will just flow. And everybody tries to do things very fast and rushing through it. Just slow it down, perfect the small pieces, stack those together, and then it'll just start to flow like a river. And I think that's the fundamental piece to athleticism.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. I think so many people, when they're thinking speed, it's like the energy. It's like, I got to be amped up, ramped up. If you ever think about, if you've watched an Olympic, sprint race, like these guys are calm, cool, collected. The minute that fire goes off, is boom, then they go. But everything leading up to that, like they're not frantically energetic all over the place. They're calm. They're in their zone. Obviously, they put in the 10, 20, 30,000 hours of work. So they know what they're there to do. But there's this element of they've got control of their nervous system to a certain degree, right? Because the minute you're amped up, like now your nervous system is in a fight or flight where you want to probably be operating from a more of a calm place. Then the gun goes, then you can pull.
Well, I mean, even then, the elite sprinters, they never sprint all out because they just know that's not the fastest way to run. Because, when you're super intense, your body's default is to contract antagonistic muscle groups to prevent movement and protect itself. So if you're a sprinter, you cannot be tensed up. That you have to relax. Being able to relax certain muscles with good timing is just as important as being able to fire the other muscles with good timing. Because if you're trying to fire your glute to the ground and open your shin angle and your hip flexors are tight and your quad is tight and not relaxed, they're going to fight each other. So being able to stay relaxed is just as important for a sprinter. And that should be a lesson learned to the rest of us too, how important relaxation is. And true intensity isn't being fired up and banging your head against the wall. It's just being focused. It's being inside your bubble and focused on the moment. That's all intensity really is.
Yeah. I want to circle back to the thing you talked about there, the importance of quality of movement. Speaking to the audience here, we're going to have guys that are, moderately fit, intermediate lifting, been doing bodybuilding stuff in the gym for, 5, 10 plus years. They got a decent physique, but maybe some of this is like, they don't feel like an athlete, right? I look great. My feet hurt when I get out of bed. It takes me 30 minutes every morning to get moving. I go into the gym, I work out, I'm limited in the range that I can do. Like I look good. I don't feel like the athlete. To that guy right now, like if he's going to begin to focus on the quality of movements, what does he need to be looking for and looking at? Is it something internally? Is it something extrinsically? Like, speak to, how do you even understand how to improve the quality of your movement?
Well, first of all, full disclosure, I'm 45 and what you just described is me in the morning, man. My feet hurt. I get aches and pains. I got bone spurs all over my body. I just had some MRIs done. It's, 3 decades of hard living, a lot of mistakes in my youth. Like a lot of what, I teach is going to make you feel better. But if you're old, you're going to have some pain that accompanies you. You know what I mean? Especially if you want to continue to train for performance, like lift heavy weights and sprint really fast, there's going to be some chronic pain there. And that's just part of life. You know what I mean? What I teach, it hopefully will help you avoid those acute, devastating injuries that debilitate you, like ruptured discs or sciatica, and that's still. Or if you have that, it'll help you work around that and recover from that. So, as to your question, I think we try to get way too intense, way too fast, and it's a subtle difference between fluff volume in the gym, because there's a push there that you don't need a lot of volume. You just need a small amount of really intense work. And there's truth there, but you also need a lot of volume of practice, like greasing the groove and tissue quality and tendon health. And both things can be true. So it's trying to walk that balance between, you do need some time under tension and practicing your pathways, especially as we get older, yeah, I just think there's common movement patterns in humans that cross all spectrums and tasks. There's sequences that our limbs and joints do. That if we can learn those common sequences through all planes of motion and practice those common sequences, it'll bleed over into everything else, and it'll naturally start to align things. Like there is a common posture when you sprint and you lift. It's not really what people think. It's like drawing your abs in, putting pressure through the back of your pelvis, not pushing down on your pelvic floor, but drawing it up and in. Those are common things. We always feel like postures like shoulder blades back, chest up. That's not really good posture. There's a way to breathe that's healthy. There's a way to stand up out of a squat or lunge, and it's internal rotation, pivoting and knife edging the inside of your foot. There's things like that everybody can learn and practice. And it's not commonly known or distributed right now to the everyday person. It's almost like it's this guarded secret to the most elite athletes that it could benefit everybody. And for some reason, it doesn't get distributed out.
Because it's not sexy, right? Learn movements, spend time mastering exercise. Like it's kind of boring, right? So I think that's probably a reason why it hasn't really blown up. And it's not controversial. It's like you can't argue against it. I was very lucky early on in my bodybuilding career to I trained in Tampa, powerhouse gym. Ben Pekulski was in kind of the prime of his career at that time as a competitive bodybuilder and was building his brand MI40. We became training partners. We became great friends. And, I learned from Ben the importance of mastery in your execution. Like all of his training programs, there's a phase of neurological based training where your body is learning movements. And some people would stay there for weeks, months, and on end, depending upon their athletic background. Other people jump right in, like their nervous system is built for it. Maybe they have a stronger background in athletics, so they pick these things up pretty quickly. But there is this foundation that must be laid.
I believe beginners need more volume than elite athletes. They just need more volume.
Yeah, I don't know how I ended up, man, but I've landed down this rabbit hole of science-based coaches online. These young kids that, look like they couldn't beat their way out of a wet paper bag on there talking about 2 reps or 2 sets is prime. And it's like, dude, your nervous system isn't primed to get out of like those 2 sets what you and I can get out of 1 rep. Like, so speak to that, the importance of the volume from the beginning and learning to go where mentally, neurologically, most people.
Well, I mean, you're right, man. It is mostly young kids that they read some stuff and then they have these concrete fundamental beliefs and they take things entirely out of context. And it's like, there's some truth to what most of them are saying, but a lot of it's contextual. And, so, as well as I do that when you start out working out, a lot of the gains at first are you increase your neurological capabilities. You start to literally innervate more muscle fibers. You learn how to recruit more motor units. Like this is a known thing, right? So kids and beginners, they just literally can't recruit as many muscle fibers as we can. So it has far more to do than just tissue development stress. So like I can take an 8-year-old kid and I can have them squat every day and they'll recover just fine because they literally can't fatigue their nervous system. So our tissues have almost an infinite ability to recover if we train them hard enough for long enough. Our nervous system does not. And so so it's all respective to your relative 1 rep max. So let's say a guy can deadlift 1,000 pounds. If he's deadlifting 80% of that, that's 800 pounds. Okay. He cannot do more than a few reps of that a week. But let's say somebody can deadlift 100 pounds. 80% of that is 80 pounds. I could literally have that person deadlift 80 pounds over and over again relative to their 1 rep max, and they can recover because the neural drive and neural demand is just night and day different. So, a high central nervous impulse is literally on the far edge of that flight or flight spectrum. It's not meant to be a daily thing, especially once it's developed. So when we train hard and long, we build the capacity to overtrain very easily because we built this enormous generator, right? That just puts out these strong signals and we can wear ourselves down. So as you age in training, a higher and higher percentage of your volume needs to be lower intensity, because you're able to tap into stuff that beginners just aren't. So when these kids talk to this like super low volume, high intensity Mike Menser stuff, which, Mike Menser brought some very valuable information to the field, there is diminishing returns to more and more volume. recovery is paramount. Like, intensity is far more important, or quality is far more important than quantity. All of that stuff is true. But there is a time when we need to build a large base, a large foundation, and that requires a lot of volume and practice.
Is there ceiling, I guess, on our? I know the answer. Let me phrase this in a way that I don't sound like an idiot asking the question. So, I guess, can you train your nervous system to hold more capacity? You mentioned, the 80% at the 80 pounds of the one racks being 100. You do it every day. You scale it up 10x. Now 1,000 pounds becomes 800. Like, can you train that person to where they can recover quicker from the 800, like the nervous system capacity training?
Yeah, you absolutely can. And I think it was the Bulgarians did this with their lifters. But is it worth it? Because in order they said, so they would squat their max like every day. But in order to get there, they would have to go through what's called the dark period, which is like, they would talk about it. It's like 2 years of misery. Like, and they were never head and shoulders above any of the other lifters that didn't do that. They did well, but they didn't become exceptionally strong by doing that. And for most of us, it's just not worth the misery, because most of us, I cannot think of a single thing that requires day in, day out, max effort, strength, and power, like in your life. There's even like dudes that play soccer and basketball every day. A very small amount of that is truly max effort. You know what I mean? Our capacity to work is much more important than our capacity to work at max intensity every single day. So yeah, theoretically you can. It's brutal. I would say 1 in a million people could actually do that. And it's just not worth it. Like, your body can literally adapt to anything, but is that adaptation worth it? It will take over your life for 2 years and you will be fucking miserable.
Yeah, I did Smolov about 12 years ago. I was at 500 max squat already. I was never a power lifter. Like, I was a bodybuilder that enjoyed power building training. So I was always like, I wanted to have big numbers in the gym, but they were like the most important. The time I was one rep in 500, I was like, I think I can get to 6. And I'm like, I want to do it quickly, like crazy. Like, this was just the mindset of me in my early 30s. I'm like, I'm just going to do whatever it takes. So I did the 4-day-a-week Smolov, which you're doing like 80%. Like, in it dug this deep hole. I only made it through the first 7 weeks because my body shut down. Like, I blew out blood vessels in my eyes. My eyes were bloodshot red for like 3 weeks on end. I did end up putting 65 pounds on, but it took me almost like 6 months to physically recover from 6 weeks of squat training. So I know exactly what you're kind of speaking
That
to.
would work if you were in like a Soviet bloc country and you just didn't have a choice. And when you got to that point where you knew you should quit, they would be like, no, you're going to do it. And you're either going to die because you don't give a fuck, or you'll adapt, And that was the beginning of that dark period they talk about. It's like 2 years of that misery. And that's just not worth it for most people. And if you want to try it, but I want to differentiate too between squatting very heavy, like you said, north of 80% of your one rep max daily, and squatting every day. Because you can go in and squat 60% of your max every single day, and there's a good argument that would be very beneficial for you. Because most days are very easy. It's a whole easy strength thing. You go in, let's say I can squat 500 pounds and I put on 300, and I'll do 3 sets of 5 of that every day. And when I leave that workout, I feel good. I'm not tired at all. There is something to be said there if you have the time to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know there's been various squat everyday programs, like Mark Lowliner from Tiger Fitness threw one out there, like 30-day squat every day. And it was different rep schemes, different squat movements, different squat patterns. This would fall under the category of functional type of work. Like, because every day you're going to be squatting, doing something, right? You're going to squat down on the toilet, you're going to squat down to pick something up. If you got children, you're going to squat down with them. So training that pattern. Is that where your, I guess, mass method has come from? It's like, I want to look great, but it's also this functional component, like to living.
A little bit. So I do nod to the fact that people want to look good too. So there's a lot of hypertrophy work in there. So I divide my workouts into slow. So which is tissue prep. So I believe the warm up shouldn't be like fast, high rep. I believe it should be isometrics and slow movements through that range of motion. So slow and then flow. And flow is more the movement patterns that we talked about, getting things to move in sequence. Slow, flow, go. The go training is like the athletic movements, like the snatches and the jumps and the athletic type stuff that builds athleticism. But that go segment does have some hypertrophy and strength benefits as well. And then after that, it's the grow segment. And what I mean by grow is grow strength. So that's the heavy basic compound movements to build functional heavy strength, like squats, deadlifts, heavy bench press, things like that. And then at the end, it's just the show. So it's like that's the auxiliaries. And so it's not revolutionary. It's just I segment things to help people comprehend it a little bit better. So it's just slow, flow, go, grow, show. And all of my workouts are pretty much arrayed a little bit like that. And then I don't believe that you have to like avoid muscle groups. So a lot of people, like, let's say they did legs one day, they're just afraid to run or jump or do anything the next day. They don't want they believe that muscle needs to just be babied. And I don't baby muscles. Like, I'm not going to avoid those muscle groups. Like, they're going to work the next day, as part of other stuff that we're doing. And yeah, you'll be really sore at first. That kind of stuff you can adapt to, because I developed something called undulating neural loading. Like Charlie Francis, he used to be the high-low guy. So high neural load, low. And that worked well for track athletes. But I believe there's things we can do to enhance certain systems and functionality that don't have a high neural demand that we can do while our nervous system recovers. So we have to separate things that are very demanding for our tissues and feel very hard, but actually are just moderate or low as far as your neurological demand goes. So you can do 2 all-out 100-meter sprints one day, and that is a very high neural load. Your nervous system will take a hit from that. You can go out and do a 5-mile run, which is very hard. You're breathing and you're tired. Your nervous system takes about the same hit from that 5-mile run as it did from just 200-meter all-out sprints. And people can't, but the 5-mile run is much harder on your tissues and your cardiovascular system. So people can't separate neural loading with tissue loading. And so my system, it's undulating because your nervous system takes a few days to recover. So I'll stack a lot of the high neural demand stuff early in my microcycle, which is like 7 to 10 days. So it's like moderate, short, very high, long and high, which is like my leg day, and then moderate, and then it'll be like very low, low, and then so it just gives your nervous system 4 to 5 straight days to recover. But during those days, you're still working. You're just kind of avoiding very high neural load activities. So very high neural load activities are max effort Olympic lifts, max effort sprints, max effort plyometrics, things like that, where a very small dose will have a very large impact on your nervous system, even if you don't feel very tired, like physically afterwards. And then moderate loading is like bodybuilding style compound lifts, like especially for your upper body. So if you do very heavy squatting, that's a high neural load. But if you do like 3 sets of 12 squatting, that's more of a moderate load on your nervous system. So that kind of stuff, you can still kind of do that and let your nervous system start to recover because it's a systemic thing, right? I think I droned on a little bit there, but that's kind of how I arrange. So I do keep in mind body part specific training. Like, I don't usually train legs multiple days in a row, but it's not based on body parts, which everybody else bases their training on body parts, right? You don't, you're not going to do chest 3 days in a row, but they don't take into consideration the neural demand. So I base my training on the neural demand of that day. And the movement specific stuff is secondary to that neural demand. That is, I'd say that's the fundamental difference between mass method and everything else.
No, that's incredible. And I appreciate you kind of, going a little bit more in depth into detail than maybe the specific question was, because I think it gives a good context to your philosophy framework. Obviously, we want to drive people to check out your stuff, and we'll have all of Judd's links to his apps, his Instagram, put incredible daily content out there. I think you said you trained a lot of kids. Like, you've spent a vast majority of your time working with young athletes. What has working with young athletes taught you about human movements, and how has this played a role into the development of your philosophies?
Well, it's taught me how to teach, first of all, because kids have a short attention span. It's taught me how to break things down and cue in ways that people understand it, right? I've dealt with every kind of injury you can imagine because I train the kids and then I'll train their older parents, right? So those two groups, very different injury profiles, but I've worked with so I can work around every injury you could ever bring up to me. So kids, mainly it's the understanding that they can take a lot physically. They can't take a lot emotionally. We can work kids very hard physically. You have to be kid gloves as far as the emotional aspect, putting stress on them to perform. So when the kids come in to see me, they're emotionally at their limit through stress and academic stress and coaching stress. And I've had to learn to teach them in a way that is almost like cloaked in like game fashion. I sandwich criticism. So I start every correction I have to make. I start it with a positive and I finish it with a positive. Just little things like that on how to elicit performance out of people are the main things. And then their nervous systems are very different than ours. They, especially prepubescent kids, their nervous systems are protective in nature. So very rarely will a kid that's under 13 years old hurt themselves lifting weights. And thank God, because the coaching and what they do is just atrocious,
Because they're not able to push their nervous system to the capacity where the injury would actually occur. Like they're going to shut off before they get
Yeah,
to the
it's
injury
weird.
threshold.
So about a decade ago, I started using isometrics for injury rehab. For a lot of the coaches would send a lot of kids my way because they couldn't do the normal weightlifting that they were doing in school. So I started to use isometrics, and I would notice that like until the kids started to go through puberty, because we have it's called a 1080 Secro, and we can measure their force output isometrically. And the kids that are under 13, it would peak and then shut down right away. They're nervous. They couldn't do it. They couldn't continually apply force onto something. And I just noticed this was a trend. And I was like, oh, their nervous system must be protecting their joints. And then once they started hitting puberty, all of a sudden they could keep that high output. And that's when they started to get more acute injuries because they were able, like if you put a young kid under a lot of weight, they're just going to crumble, and everything will fold and they're real mobile. If you put another kid, they'll push on it real hard and then until something breaks, you know what I mean? So that's a big difference I noticed in people. Like that's why, males, first of all, our tissues aren't as supple or mobile naturally. Like we're naturally not as flexible and mobile. And we have a higher neural output, especially in our upper body. So per pound of muscle mass, males are just much stronger than females. Now that comes at a cost. Females have a much greater pain threshold, a much greater work capacity. I know that rubs some dudes the wrong way, but women, they have a much higher pain tolerance. They have a much higher work capacity tolerance than men do. But we can put out a much larger neural signal. So even lower body's closer, but like let's say a male has 30 pounds of lower body muscle mass and a female has 30, that male's still going to be stronger because we have a higher neural output, right? But that comes at a cost, and we are much more likely to hurt ourselves, honestly.
That's fascinating, man. That's really.
I mean, you see these little dudes, right? They're still able to bench press 200 pounds, but pretty jacked woman. It's pretty impressive when she benches 200 pounds.
Yeah, very, very, yeah. I mean, whole different argument, but there's a reason why to keep men out of female sports. But I don't want to open that can up with you here today.
A dude that has had hormone therapy for decades, that has the current hormone profile of a woman, is still way stronger than a natural born woman because they've had the benefit of decades of higher androgens and central nervous system development. It's the thing that bothers me about that is like we just take science out of it. It's like you're supposed to be doctors and pride yourself on science, and then you just ignore the fact that even if a man has zero testosterone and loads of estrogen's an anabolic thing too, by the way, they're still going to be crazy stronger than a natural born woman. It's just completely unfair.
Staying on this topic of youth training, right? We'll have some dads listening to this and, they're getting amped up and fired up now. They're going to embrace this athlete mindset in their own life. And they're like, you know what? I'm going to get little Johnny out there with me as well. Speaking to the fathers that maybe don't have access to, Coach Judd in their area. And they're going to take this kind of project on their own to start working with their kids. What age, right? How young is too young to start some physical training? And what are, maybe the core movement patterns that somebody should be working on with a young kid to really help set them up for success long term?
So there's no age that's too young, but it's like what is appropriate for that age. And when you take a 3 or 4-year-old, it's gameplay. You give them tasks and fun things to do. There's no pressure. There's no yelling. There's no going to exhaustion. And that only slowly starts to transition up until 16, 17, 18 years old. So the biggest thing is, first of all, every dad that wants to get into sports, it starts with the question, why? Why do you want your kid in sports? And then write those down and then adhere to those. Do you want him to be a professional Major League Baseball player? Do you want him to be what you weren't, basically? Are you trying to live vicariously through your kid? If so, check yourself. Are you doing it because you want him to develop character and loyalty and see the bigger picture and confidence? And then that's where you need to base your instruction around. And lecturing your kid, belittling your kid, comparing your kid to what you did at his age, comparing your kid to his peers, all of that stuff goes against your stated principles for entering your kid into sports. And excellence in sports is, to me, irrelevant. It's teaching your kid the process that leads to excellence that is important. And that doesn't start with yelling and belittling. It starts with making it fun for that kid so that he looks forward to working every day. It starts from a positive mindset. And that's what these dads fundamentally forget. And I think we look back and remember ourselves as way tougher and more dedicated than we actually were, to be quite honest. Because I get these dads in there all the time, be like, when I was your age, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, sure you were, buddy. Okay, I'll believe when I see it. Talk about how hard they worked and how fast they were. It's like, okay, well, now you're 60 pounds overweight and you haven't worked out in 3 years. What changed? How were you such a badass athlete when you were your son's age? And now, you can go out and run a mile and save your fucking life. So there's nothing saying that you can't work hard now, but you're choosing not to. It's shit like that where I just see these dads say these things in front of their kids. I'm like, come on, man. I'm sorry, but as far as the movement patterns go, you have your 7 primal patterns, push, pull, squat, lunge, hinge, carry, rotation. Base everything around those, and then blend them together, and then work all 3 planes of motion: sagittal, frontal, transverse. And I know that seems like a lot, but it's really not. Like, understand the patterns, and there's subtleties in each pattern. That's not as important. And then blend those patterns together, to learn the planes of motion. I know it sounds super scientific, but it's not that hard. It's like if you're drawing a cartoon character that's 2-dimensional. When you draw a painting and it looks like it has depth, well, you added the sagittal plane. So you got your rotation here, you got your front and back, and you got your side to side, and just work all of those planes and blend them together. It's if you're doing that, you're on the right path.
Yeah. I love that you called out some dads, man. I've spent, many years at sports fields, obviously growing up playing sports, but my nephew's 14. I've been a big part of his life, coaching him in baseball various seasons. My girlfriend now, she has a 9 and a 6-year-old. And, so you see these dads that are, 60 pounds overweight, barking at their kid from, the shaded seat, lawn chair. And it's like, but then that's the same guy that comes up to me at the gym is like, bro, I used to look like you when I was your age. It's like, no, you didn't, bro. Like, seriously? Like, you never looked like me. Like, let's be real here. So how did guys stop buying their own bullshit?
Well, first of all, so I recently posted something about this. It's 3 main categories with your children. It's criticize, compare, and give them an out, or deflect, rather. Criticize, compare, and deflect. So they criticize their kid all the time, and they think it's like they're teaching them. No, you're just being critical, being sarcastic, you're being demeaning. Compare their kid to what they used to be, and comparing their kid to other kids. And then deflect responsibility. It's never the kid's fault. It's always the coach that doesn't like them. It's always a rich donor dad that, and they do it in front of their kid. So not only are you criticizing them and comparing them negatively to their peers, then you're also giving them an out for why they're not starting. That, to me, is the trifecta of bad parenting: is criticize, compare, and deflect. And it's funny, I'll see the dads, like you're saying, they're leaning on the chain link fence. And one moment they're yelling at the ref and making an excuse for why their kid didn't get the first down, right? And then the next minute they're telling their kid, they're yelling something negative at their kid. I'm like, one hand you're saying it's not their fault, and then the other hand you're saying they need to do better. And whenever a dad speaks, I just look for those 3 things. And I think if a dad can just, am I criticizing right now? Am I comparing? Am I deflecting responsibility? And, I'm not saying it's not valid. Like, yeah, sometimes kids do get the starting spot because their dad is a donor or the coach's kid, or sometimes refs do make bad calls. So that's life. That's one of the great things about sports, is it teaches us that, yeah, sometimes life isn't fair, and you have to do what you can do with the tools you've been given, and complaining and whining about it doesn't do you any good. And a dad can mumble something to the mom or something. Don't let the kid hear it. Don't let the kid hear you taking his responsibility to perform off of his shoulders and out of his hands, because then he just becomes this whiny victim.
Yeah, and then the whole ride home, maybe you're not barking directly at the kid, you're barking at the wife about the mom, about all the issues. Kids is just receiving all of that, right? They're remembering all of it. So then they grow up and they start pointing and deflecting. Man, I wish parents understood what they were doing there. It's funny.
Dad, man, I don't ever remember him giving me a compliment ever. Not like give your kids some compliments, especially on their character and how hard they work. Like you don't always need to criticize your kid, man. Actually, be very careful with your criticism. Just always be aware. Like, what am I criticizing now? And am I living to the standard that I'm holding my kid to?
Yeah. We talked about identity at the beginning, man. You're shaping your child's identity at that age, helping them understand who they are. And if it's constant criticism, they are developing the identity. And trust me, as somebody that works with men going through childhood emotional wounds and pains on a daily basis, like if I could give one insight to the parents here, like understand the role you're playing in developing who your kids are becoming. You birth them, but you're helping them become a person, and everything you say, do, in and around them is being imprinted upon
Your
them.
number one job as a parent is to remain a safe place for your kid to come to. They need to know that they can turn to you and are safe, because when you lose that, it's not like they're going to stop going through these things. They'll just stop coming to you. And then the question is, who are they going to? And this, I'm not saying this is like you excuse all behavior, but if they come to you and they've done something very bad, or they have, done something that they're ashamed of, you have to be very careful in how you mentor your kid, because if you don't do it the right way, they'll just stop coming to you. And then you have no control over the development. And the last thing is, like, I anchor my life on three basic things. It's accountability, resiliency, and gratitude. And those are the three things you have to anchor into your child. Be accountable for your actions, be resilient, and then be grateful for the things you've been given.
I love that, man. I love that. John, I want to give the audience a little bit of your story, man. Obviously college linebacker, grew up, I'm sure, playing sports all throughout your youth. Then you got into sports training, conditioning. Then you took a brief stint into the Army Rangers, made it to the elites there, and then back into strength and conditioning. That's kind of been where you planted your flag for your career and how you've, impacted the world. Walk us through that journey and how fitness and strength training, and specifically athletic type of training, has just become your core mission in the world.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the same house until I left high school, out in the country, outside of a small town in northern Missouri, just rural Midwest, redneck, you know, hay farm, love to ride motorcycles and all the normal stuff. Played for a very small 2A high school, played both ways. Was fortunate enough, we played a bigger school one week, and one of the recruiters from a Division II college, Truman State, they saw me play, got a scholarship, played all 5 years, I guess, at a Division II football program. Did well there. And then, when I got out, like, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wasn't very mature. I didn't know. I knew I loved working out, and I know I loved lifting weights. Got an exercise science degree. Had a job, had a chance to get like a really good job in like Bellevue, Washington, and I took a job at 24 Hour Fitness in San Diego because it sounded fun. You know what I mean? So like, I was a personal trainer at 24 Hour Fitness for 2 or 3 years, and like, bounced at nightclubs at night, all that typical stuff. And that was, at that time, it was like 2004 to 2007, 6, I think. And that Iraq war, is after the invasion. Is like Fallujah was going on, Ramadi, and dudes my age were over there fighting for something larger than themselves. And I was like partying on a beach, bouncing in nightclubs. And my life was unfulfilling. And I felt like I just wasn't doing my part. And it's not like I agreed with the war or anything. I was like, well, these dudes are dying instead of me. It just did not feel right. So I walked into the Army recruiter's office. First, I was going to be a Marine, right? So I called up the Marine recruiter. And he's like, well, how many pull-ups can you do? And I was honest, I can do 26 pull-ups. He's like, bullshit. And it pissed me off. So I was like, fuck you. The Army, dude. And at first I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. But so I took the AFAS and all the tests. And it was like a 6-month pipeline to even be able to apply for the flight training. And he's like, well, you can be an infantry officer. I was like, done. So I signed up for the infantry, and then I had to go to regular basic training, and then infantry officer school, ranger school, airborne. And then I just went to a normal unit, 10th Mountain Division, deployed once with them in northern Iraq, And then for officers, you have to go in the regular Army first, and then you can apply to go into Ranger Regiment. So I put in my packet, got accepted to go to their selection, passed selection, went to 3rd Ranger Battalion, did 3 deployments with them. And then I just got out. Like, I didn't want to make it a career at that point. But yeah, I think I did 3 total deployments. So I did 2 deployments with them. Another one in Iraq and then one in Afghanistan. And the one in Afghanistan was pretty hard, firefights every single day. That one had a big impact on me.
How did that change you? I've asked this question to a lot of you guys, military, special forces, guys that have served and have seen, looked evil right in the face and have come face to face with death many times. How did those wars, how did even seeing death for the first time change?
I don't think I realized it at the time how big of an impact it had on me. Because I didn't feel traumatized afterwards immediately. It was like years later, as nightmares and stuff like that, and then like social anxiety, and just seeing the impact on the friends of those, they would see their best friends die. Seeing that day in and day out had a bigger impact than the actual death itself. There was a mission. It turned out to be my last mission in Afghanistan, where the rear element kid, I was actually happened to be standing next to him because I'm a platoon leader. So like, we're not door kickers, you know what I mean? Honestly, usually. So I'm in the back running the air and everything with my RTO, and the rear element security that happened to be a saw gunner saw an old man point a cane at us, and it's on the other side of a creek, and it's nighttime through night vision, and he thought it was a gun, and he puts a burst into this dude. So we still thought it was a bad guy. So I'm with him. So we crossed the creek, and turned out it was an old man with a cane, and it had gone through him and it killed his wife on the other side of their door, which is just this corrugated tin thing they're using for door. Mortally wounded their son, who was screaming. And then how they live over there, they live in like these extended family units, and so there's probably 50 people in here, and we just killed the grandma and grandpa basically. So it took a while to enter so we don't know if there's bad guys in there. I mean, we just got in a firefight around their compound, and at the time we were surrounded in another compound. I mean, a couple dudes had died at that point already. And so I had to pull security while we brought up enough dudes to enter this compound. And, I saw the old man die, staring at me, like gurgling something to me that he couldn't say. I used to speak in Pashtun, and I had recurring nightmares about that for years. And then we stepped over the dead grandma. And then, all the kids and people were sheltering in these back rooms, and we didn't know if there was a threat. So we had to clear them with flashbangs and get them out, which traumatized them even more. But then, when we realized we had killed 2 civilians, mortally wounded a third, we couldn't just leave. We had to stay there and so we could fly in reparations. So we had to get it approved because we basically have to pay them for killing and then we had to stay there with them the whole day. These people mourning their grandparents, knowing that we were responsible. And I was the platoon leader. I was ultimately responsible. And then during that time, it was lunchtime, and they were making food for their family. The girls sat there the whole day and just cried over their grandma and grandpa. And they brought us food. Like, we didn't eat it. There wasn't enough for everybody, but it was a gesture. Would we do that? Like, let's say somebody invaded our country and they killed my grandma and grandpa, and they're there with me. Would I bring them food? And it's hard to hate people like that, man. And I just saw the goodness in people, different religion, different culture. And yeah, the Taliban were horrible, and it was a dark, backwards society at that point, but there's still human goodness in people. And that had a profound impact on me moving forward. And just, I remember we flew out the guy that we'd mortally wounded trying to save his life, and we flew in the cash. And I just remember the bundle of cash coming down the ramp as we carried the dying Afghan farmer up the ramp. And there's a lot of symbolism there. And I was just like, Jesus, what are we doing here?
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I've heard you speak openly about your faith, your relationship with God. Is that always there for you? I mean, even growing up, you mentioned, the Southern, farm boy upbringing. Like, was faith always a foundation or rock, or was it a lot of what you saw in battle grew you closer to him, or even later on? Like, did he help you?
Yeah, honestly, man. So I always believed in God. I always knew there was something out there. I didn't believe in Jesus. I questioned the existence of Jesus forever. And, I pride myself on my intellect. And I just, and the Bible didn't make sense to me, and this and that. And I had an experience with Jesus, and it was weird because it wasn't at a traumatic point in my life. He came to me. People think I'm crazy. He came to me on like a Tuesday, middle of the day, and it was an overwhelming sense of peace that flooded me. And I felt his presence, because nobody could have ever convinced me that Jesus was real. And I think God knew that, and he had to give me, the most logical guy in the world, an actual experience with Jesus for me to believe. I had to feel Jesus's presence, and it, without a doubt, I was like, this is Jesus. And it's like he talks to my soul, and I knew exactly what I had to do moving forward. And from that moment on, because if somebody reasons me into believing in Jesus, they can reason me out. I can argue, I can reason you out of believing in Jesus in an hour. I know all the arguments, right? But once you feel his presence, there's no reasoning past that. It's like, yeah, say whatever you want. I felt Jesus, and I know what I felt. And it's as, and it wasn't, I was not on drugs. I was not emotionally unstable. It was clear as day. And I can't describe to people the overwhelming feeling of peace and joy that his presence brings to you. And then since then, I haven't had that complete feeling again, but I've had pieces of it, and I recognize it now. And it's like, oh, this is the feeling of Jesus. And so it just carries with me moving forward. And when people argue so vehemently against Jesus and religion, first of all, I'm like, why do you care so much? When somebody argues for an astrological sign, or they do, they pray to a fucking crystal, you don't get so worked up. You just kind of laugh about it. But you get angry when people talk about Jesus. There's a lot of reasons for that. Like Christians, or so-called Christians, done a lot of bad things. I got it. But there's something in you that's like just angry when somebody believes in Jesus, especially when they're not coming at you, or they're not telling you you need to believe, or they're not saying you're going to go to hell. They just are proclaiming their faith, and you feel the need to mock them and try to convince them otherwise. The question is, what inside of you that feels you should do that to this person, that you should get them to question their faith? Like, why are you so emotionally invested in somebody not believing? You know? And I think there's a misconception. We think that people that believe and have faith, it's a weakness and they need it because they need to. No, I would feel much more comfortable tomorrow if I didn't believe in God. It'd be easy for me. I would have no obligations. When I died and shut my eyes, the world would go black, you know, and I have no responsibility to spread the word. But believing and knowing that there's Jesus is a big responsibility. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not like I believe in Jesus because I feel like I need to, because I'm scared not to. I would much prefer to be an atheist, because to me it would just be easy. The world wouldn't mean anything. But now I know the world means something, and my time here on earth means something. And I think people have a big misconception that faith is an easy way out for people. Yeah.
Dude, my life has gotten exponentially harder since coming to my faith in many areas. I navigated through peace, though. I resonate so much with that overwhelming sense of peace and calm, because I experienced the same thing on February 17th of 2019. I remember the exact day. It was a Sunday morning. It was probably 9:45. Just got into a massive argument with my girlfriend, and I punched 3 holes in the wall. In the third one, I hit the stud 2x4. My hand was shattered. I broke every metacarpal. My hand was double the size when I pulled out of the wall. I collapsed on the ground, cried out to God, like, take me. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. And in that moment, boom, he was there. And it was like everything that I was afraid of, that I was running from, that I was hiding, was taken away. In the hospital emergency room, they couldn't understand how a man with a hand his hand was this big, twice the size, had a heart rate of 47, because I was so at peace. Like, I knew life is going to be hard. Like, there's going to be a lot of struggles that I'm going to go through, but you're with me throughout this entire thing, so I can live at peace. And yeah, it's been a lot of shit that I've had to go through. I see darkness every single day with men, but I put my head down at
You
night
really do
every
need to
single.
kill the old man daily. It's not like once you're a believer, your soul might be saved, but it's not like that peace can stay with you. You need to actively kill the old man daily. You know what I mean? And you just can't. People can't explain. They can't imagine the level of peace you feel when Jesus is with you. And it's just, you know, people that don't believe, I totally understand it, and I feel really bad for them. And it's not like I judge them or want to scold them. I love them, and I just know that when you believe in God, it's not like your life becomes charmed. You're still going to get sick. You still might get cancer. Horrible things are going to happen to you. but the belief in God will give you a joy that will just stay with you. And that's what it's not the prosperity Bible shit. Believing in God and giving to the church won't make you rich necessarily. But a lot of people that do start to believe in Jesus do get rich. And it's because their actions reflect Jesus and good things. They're doing good things just so that's why God doesn't really need to punish people because their actions punish themselves. It's you start to your heart just puts forward in the world, and that just results in bad things happening to you. And God mourns that. He doesn't need to curse you or anything else. He mourns that. You know, when they talk about when that church had to in Corinthians had to cast that guy out to the devil, it wasn't like they were condemning him to hell. If you read that, it's like, no, right now the church is protecting him. So he's not seeing the repercussions of his actions. So he's not changing. So kick him out of the church so that his actions can result in those repercussions in his life. So throwing him to the devil so that he can be then hopefully forced to turn back to God. And that's all it was. Just let his actions and let him reap what he has sowed. And that's all it was. It's not like he condemned him to hell. People misunderstand that all the time. I didn't mean to turn this into a sermon.
No, but I asked the question, man. I had plans to go here with you as well, man. But I'm really glad we did, man. You know, I wanted to stay. I think I told you at the beginning, I want to stay on the training and the fitness stuff, but I was like, no, this conversation is going to go where it's called to go, and I'm glad. I'm glad we're here, man. People want to check out your fitness stuff, dude. We got the app plug down there below. Check out the Instagram. Like, this is the stuff, man, because this is, to me, it's knowing these things about you that make what you share online more meaningful to me. It's like, why is this guy showing up on my feed 5 times a day? He's sharing the best value in the fitness space because he cares and he knows that it's his purpose to share this information with the world. So
A lot of people aren't happy because they don't have purpose, and purpose seems like this mystical thing. And I'll explain it very easy what purpose is. It's where your passion intersects with service. So you find what you're passionate about, and it doesn't matter what that is. It can be something random, and then find a way to serve people with your passion, and that is your purpose. It's really that easy. And I love fitness, and like, how can I serve people with fitness? Bam, there's my purpose, just like that.
yeah, you know, our show here is called, and this is hijacking the last question, but I'll formulate something that'll be valuable for all of us. But, you know, the show is called The Superhuman Life. And I've been on this journey of defining what the hell does that mean? It's like, the name came to me back in 2019. You got to call the show The Superhuman Life. And it's like, well, what does that mean? I was like, I don't know. I'm going to interview a lot of people and figure it out. But I've landed on a definition for me. And it is, you were put here for a purpose, right? So every single person listening, walking this earth right now has something divinely planted inside of them that is here to serve the world. That's your purpose. Your life becomes superhuman when you take that purpose and develop it, right? So you developed fitness through a lifetime of athletics, through military training, through training in people. And now you're able to share the message with millions of people on a daily basis. So you have a purpose. God gave you the love and the ability for fitness. You developed it over your lifetime. It's superhuman now because you share that with the world. So in my eyes, you're living it out every single day in what you shared, because you didn't just stop and saying, yeah, I'm passionate about fitness. Like, no, become the best in the world at understanding these things, from biomechanics through muscle physiology, through nutrition, through athletic performance, through injury prevention. So you become a true master, 23,000 hours of in-person training. Like, you've developed the passion. You didn't just say, I'm here and I'm good at it. It's like, no, I'm going to go hard.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times you don't always know why you're doing stuff or where you're being, and you don't understand that the things that not turning out in your favor, or injuries, setbacks, your curses, are really your blessings. Because the reason I'm able to coach kids so well and relate to people is because I didn't get a job with celebrities or training first round draft picks when I was 25 years old. I got a job training kids and injured people. And that was a blessing because it taught me how to teach people properly. I had a lot of really bad injuries, did a lot of stupid things in my training, and my injuries were painful. They taught me what not to do, how to recover, how to train around those. And then I was able to become valuable to other people because of things that I thought were bad things that had happened to me. Your kid gets cancer and dies, and it's devastating, but now you know what it's like. Now you understand the devastating pain, and you go forward then, and now you can talk to another parent whose kid has cancer, and you can understand what they're feeling, and you can be service. So sometimes not everything God does, Doesn't make sense. Go through a horrible divorce, but now you can talk to guys that get divorced, but it all hinges on how you use those experiences. Does it soften your heart and make you tender, or does it harden your heart? And that's where like the seed of God is so important, because all of the curses in our life that are really blessings, they can make us valuable to others, or they can make us a plague to others, you know?
Yeah. Simple question here in any scenario, right? Did this happen to me or is this happening for me? And able to shift that paradigm every single time from this happened to me for this is happening for me means that there's going to be a purpose. And even in the suffering, it happened for me, right? The divorce happened for me because now I can speak into others. The injury happened for me because now I understand injury prevention and I can help and coach others, and I can even build my body back up stronger so that injury doesn't happen again. Every scenario, it's a 2 or 4 equation. Which one is it? You choose, right? You can be the victim or you can be the victor, is what we like to say.
I mean, when you look at older people, man, and you see the lines on my face and my bad skin, and that I got some movement limitations. It's like, they've been there. You know what I mean? Like you've lived a hard life. People, an easy life and a fulfilling life are just not compatible. I'm sorry, they're not. But a hard life and a fulfilling life, those two things can walk hand in hand.
Judd, man, anything exciting you up right now, whether it's on the app training side or just in your business or personal? What's got you lit up right now?
Yeah, I'm working on building out the fitness app, trying to put, I think we have over a dozen blocks in there now, different training blocks for people that have different needs.
Who's it for?
It's not really for beginners. So there is a mass method beginners in there, but it's for people that have been working out for a while that are looking for something new. For beginner training is a little bit simple and different. So it's not really for beginners. But other than that, it's for anybody that wants a balanced approach to fitness and athleticism. And each block will focus on a slightly different thing, but each block has a little bit of balance to it. So you can at least maintain all of your aspects of athleticism while you focus on enhancing one or two at a time. But, and it's primarily, I built it for dudes about my age, from 30 years old to 60. But, I use a lot of the concepts with my younger kids too. So it's just not really for straight up beginners.
Yeah. So 2 years kind of training under your belt, you built a solid foundation. Now you're looking to kind of really master and get into something that's going to be more periodized, more undulating. Guys, man, I brought Judd here because I stumbled across his content a little over a year ago. I've taken things literally that I've just follow on your Instagram and have integrated them into my training. So I got 20 years in bodybuilding. Like I've worked with the best in the world. I've trained a lot of people in the bodybuilding space, but I picked a lot of things up that have helped me. So at 41, turning 42 later this year, like I feel great, move great. I don't think I move as well as you, but the sprints are there, the running is there, the jumping, the moving, all that great stuff. And I feel injury free at this point. So there's a lot of value what he's sharing, guys. So we'll have all of Judd's Instagrams. We'll have his app plugged down there. Definitely worth at least following the free stuff because there's so much value, man. So brother, I want to acknowledge you because you are one of the true ones out there that are putting real content out there and invaluable. And I know because I got a chance to hear why today while you're doing it, man. So thank you. And guys, make sure to check out all of Judd's stuff. Let's wrap this up with our last and final question. Usually I ask the superhuman question, like, what does it mean to live a superhuman life? You kind of gave us your question there. So I asked you at the beginning, what is the always athlete mindset? I want to end it with, why is it important for the guy over 30 to live as an athlete?
At this point in your life, if you're not an athlete, it's going to limit your value to other people. It's going to limit your value to your family and your loved ones. You're going to miss out on a lot. They're going to miss out on having you around for a longer time. But it's about more than just living a long life. It's being able to live a long, physically fulfilling life. And our body is our vehicle. We're in it 24/7. And if your vehicle breaks down, you cannot go through life. So it's more important now for you to be an athlete, honestly, than it was when you're early 20s, because now people depend on you. You're going to have to be there. You're going to want to be there to see your kids and your wife and anybody you want to serve in your community and help guide them, because now you have all of that experience from your life lived. But are you going to be able to physically show up to help people? And that depends entirely on your athletic ability.
Amen, brother. Guys, Judd, check him out. I'll have his links down there below. Check out the Active Mass Method. Brother, I appreciate you so much for the time here, just everything you're putting out in the world, man. Keep it up. Looking forward to staying in touch and connected with you and having you back on down the road. But for your host, Coach Frank, Judd Lienhard, we love you guys. We'll see you in the next one.